The real reasons people migrate to the US. Over the decades, the US government has imposed free trade agreements on many countries throughout the world. There are now over 20 countries that are engaged in active free trade agreements with the US, including nations that have high levels of immigration to the United States like Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Free trade means freedom for corporations, not workers. These agreements typically involve provisions that force countries to repeal laws meant to protect their economies and the environment from abuse by giant US-based companies. For instance, NAFTA, the predecessor agreement to the USMCA, forced Mexico to repeal an article of their constitution granting land to small farmers. When US-based agribusiness corporations began taking over land, large numbers of people were forced to leave for the United States to make a living. US corporations are looting resources and exploiting labor. Even if a country doesn't have a formal trade agreement with the US, the economies of so many nations have been warped by the long-term domination of corporations based in the US and other big capitalist powers. The world economy is set up so that the wealth is transferred out of most countries and into a handful of rich countries. For example, Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world, and France is one of the richest. Niger is rich in natural resources. It has huge amounts of uranium. But the country's uranium for decades was controlled by a French corporation called Orano, which used Niger's resources to generate up to 1/3 of all the electricity in France. In other cases, exploiting labor is the main goal. Clothing exports to the United States account for about 5% of Haiti's entire economy. The average wage of Haitian garment workers is $5.50 per day. Workers who leave their countries for wealthier ones are essentially following the looted wealth of their home nations in the hope of being able to live a decent life. War and occupation. The politicians and generals send the US military all around the world to advance the interests of big corporations with devastating violence. Countries targeted for US war and occupation experience some of the worst violence and poverty in the world. Large numbers of people see no other option but to leave their home countries. Take Afghanistan, for instance, which endured 20 years of US occupation. There are now at least 2.6 million Afghan refugees around the world. In 2000, the year before the war began, there were 45,000 Afghan immigrants in the United States. By the end of the occupation, there were 195,000 Afghans living in the US. Sanctions. Even if the US military doesn't attack with bombs and bullets, the effects of economic warfare can be just as severe. Venezuela is a key example. In 2015, the US government has imposed devastating sanctions that cut the country off from most major trading partners, and especially targeted the most important export industry, oil. As a result, the economy experienced a profound economic crisis and catastrophic levels of inflation. 40,000 Venezuelans because critical supplies were not able to reach the country. More than 7 million Venezuelans have left their country since 2015. Over 500,000 of them now live in the United States. Thank you so much to the Party for Socialism and Liberation for these slides. You can find them on your favorite social media. Solidarity, comrades.